Welcome to Pivot with Greta Scholes, a conversation with business executives on changes in their business and what they've done when those things happen. Well, today I am introducing Corey Saban, a friend of mine from years ago. What a great story Corey has. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I know him and what I know. So I've known Corey for, 15, 18 years. And the reason I know Corey, and I knew him before he knew that I knew him, because I would sit and watch the news at night and on the weekends, and Corey was a reporter and an anchor. And so, I knew him before he really knew me. And then he changed careers, and I started seeing him around in the community, and he's made such a difference in our community. So I'd like to have Corey tell you a little bit about that. His journey is so interesting, and I think you guys would really enjoy it. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you so much, Greta, and it's good that I got to know you, and it's one of the things I'm thankful for. As Greta said, I was a news anchor and reporter for about 15 years. By the way, this is Bruno over here. He's our new golden doodle. So he's on my lap. And then I switched over and took all those skills that I learned about storytelling, crisis management, and I turned that into just helping people sharing their story more effectively, whether that be through video, whether that being more prepared for speaking with the media, and or what they're selling, i.e. it's something Greta and I have kicked around for years, is people don't know how to network effectively, they don't know their elevator pitch, etc. So that's what I do, work with people in those spaces as well as crisis management.
So how do you make the switch from being a reporter to an entrepreneur? I mean, that's a pretty big, it is and it isn't. I mean, I've been known to say probably the best salespeople, the best entrepreneurs, the people that are business growers are people that understand how to interview. So it was probably a real advantage for you. But that still is a pretty big jump. Talk about how you did that, a little bit about that journey.
Thanks for asking that. It's interesting because I thought it was a natural skill that most reporters would have, but a lot don't. You see, I looked at it as, in a sense, it's sales. Why? Because I'm assigned a story, and on that day, I'm tracking you down, I'm knocking on your door, getting you to talk about something that you don't want to speak about or something horrific that happened, to share your story. In a sense, that's sales, because you're getting someone to talk about something and to share. And it's the perseverance, it's the determination, it's all of those things that you need to be successful as a reporter. They translate well into entrepreneurship because, one, you get the satisfaction of working with different teams each day and telling their story and helping them, but you're being persistent and determined to go out and hustle. And as you know, as an entrepreneur, you can work with people, but if they don't want to go out and hustle, if they're not determined, they're not going to achieve anything. For me, it was an interesting switch because you went from, when I was news anchor and reporter here, Corey Saban at ABC, to just Corey Saban at my company, CS Mediaworks, or, when I was with Video Bolt, and people would say, well, I don't want to return the call, or I don't want to chat with you. Whereas with ABC behind your name, it's a lot easier to get people to talk.
Yes. So how did you finally say, okay, I'm going to get away from the news business at all. I'm going to get away from television and I'm going to open my own. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. That is, being an entrepreneur is something that everybody says, it's amazing. And I know you and I have talked to people over the years about this, and people always say to me, I want to open my own business someday. And I always ask them why. And the number one answer is, I want to have my own hours. I want to work on my own. Okay. Your hours are really never your own, and you work constantly and never stops. But my point is, so many people talk about making that jump and that journey. What made you really decide, and why did you do it?
When I went in, I started my career as a sportscaster, and that's all I ever wanted to do. We grew up in Queens, New York, sat in the 400 level at Shea Stadium, and my whole objective was to try to get as close to the field as possible and weave in and out of the guys cleaning the seats, the ushers, and talk during the game, much to the chagrin of everybody around me. So when I became a sportscaster, for 5 years I did that in Miami and just traveling with the Hurricanes or, doing the Heat games and Dolphins, etc. I loved it. But then I got into TV news, and I found it more fascinating because you weren't just talking about X's and O's and just typical athlete quotes. You were talking to real people with real problems. And after about 10 years of that, it's okay. I've interviewed everybody I've ever wanted to interview. I've told a lot of great stories, and I don't want to be the old guy out in the rain during a hurricane anymore. But in 2008, I was still interviewing. I was in at a job fair in Chicago, and I had met this woman from CBS, and we were talking over a couple of days, getting to know each other. And she was taking my tape around to different CBS affiliates. And she had asked me, have you done everything you've ever wanted to do? Well, yeah, I'd still love to interview Paul McCartney. And we both laughed. And she said, what else do you like to do? And I said, listen, I love to teach. I love to work with people. I love the ADD of broadcasting because every day it's a different story. And I'd like to create my own thing where I could do that and be an entrepreneur for all the reasons you outlined. And she said, well, listen, don't be an understudy in your own life. And that was a powerful quote to me. And I went home, I obsessed about it. A few days later in 2008, I'm standing out in the rain during a hurricane. And, and I had some other choices to work with a startup company, helping lawyers with video with a couple of colleagues. And I decided to then call in and, give my 2 weeks. So
brave.
It was a change. And, I look back and I'm like, yeah, it was a great decision because, I've done everything I wanted to do.
It is brave. It's a great decision, but it is brave. The reason I say it's brave is you're married, you have children, you have a home. That's a big jump. And when you start with a new company, even if you have partners, unless you're getting an infusion of investors and they're paying a huge salary for you to do this, which I imagine most of us are not in that situation, it's a difficult move. So what do you think the most important things you did to really become successful? Because you're super successful now, and I know you've shifted that business some.
Sure.
Talk about how you did that and how you shifted. Now I know, you're more known for crisis management, and we'll talk about what that is. But how did you make that shift?
For me, as a little boy, my dad, I remember, gave me a bookmark. I was an avid reader, and it said, nothing happens without a dream. And he'd always say, reach for the stars, they're yours. You can do it. Perseverance, determination. And I was always that guy. I was just pushing. And that's a great quality, but it's also, a bad quality in a sense because you can't really enjoy the present. And that's something I'm working on because when you achieve that goal, you're like, what's next? But it's okay. You have to stop and say, hey, here's where I am and I need to enjoy it. But for me, it was perseverance. And yeah, you're right. Started no money, bad economy, and just out there hustle. And things worked out. You put in the time and you talk to enough people. And that's what it's about to this day. You think about it, everything's cyclical. We have inflation now and people will say, oh, the world's going to end, etc. But that was the same thing people said years ago as well, whether we segued from Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan and, from George Bush to Barack Obama. So it's always going to happen, but it's going out there, positive mindset and just talking to people and listening to people and finding out what their needs are and seeing if you can accommodate. And if you can't accommodate, then passing it on to someone who can.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing too, Corey. If you can help somebody and you can accommodate and you can fill the need that they have, I think that's wonderful. But you made an important point, passing it to somebody else that can. And I think that, to me, entrepreneurship is, what you do, what you can do to help people. But if you can't, the idea of asking enough questions to learn what their real needs are and then say, look, I'd love to help you, but here's really the person who's best for you. I think that's part of being a good entrepreneur. It's part of being a good business person because you can't do everything and be everything to everybody. And I think that's really important. And I think you really know that.
Yeah, you're right. Because there's nothing worse than, for me personally, taking on something and I know I didn't deliver. And I know I can't be everything to everybody. And then, all of a sudden now, if I tee somebody else up and give them that opportunity, they feel pretty good about me. Hey, this guy helped me. So it's a win all around.
Yeah, it is. So now you've shifted. I know you, when you first got out, you worked with a couple of other guys. You did, Video Bolt. I know you've done several things along the way, and you seem to really have caught some fire with this crisis management.
Yeah.
Talk about that, and what exactly does that mean? What do you do? What are some of the things that you're talking to people about?
Yeah, no, that's great. What happens is when people think of crisis management, they'll think hurricane.
Yes.
They'll think natural disaster, fire. What I come at it as is as a former news guy, I know baiting questions to ask you to get you say something you don't want to say. And most companies, when you go in after there's a situation, the first inclination you're going to get is no comment. And you know, when you've seen it on TV, we tried to reach Greta, she had no comment. Right away, Greta did it. So it's the same thing. Or they'll just take the wait and see approach where they bury their head in the sand. So what I do is I go into the companies and I do a great deal of research into their challenges. And if they have some, great. If they don't, I show them other things that other companies like theirs have faced, whether it be, technology, hackings, whatever it may be, any of the workplace issues that they would face and the challenges they would deal with, and show them, okay, here's how this could get out. Here's how the media will ask you about it. What will you say? And in those sessions, they're very interactive. We role play, bring a camera guy, the whole deal, get in front of them. And companies walk out of there and they're like, that was the fastest 3 hours ever. And I feel better prepared. And oh my goodness, I'm scared to my daylights. Then the next step is understanding that your biggest crisis is culture. What's the culture of your workplace? Because you've got 5 generations there. And I'm Gen X, but Gen Z wants different things than Gen X, and as does the millennials. So how are you catering to them? What's the work-life balance? What are you doing in the community to give back? How are you team building? How are you understanding their needs emotionally and professionally? Because emotionally has come into play considering what we've been through with the pandemic, and 9 out of 10 people think there's a mental health crisis in the US. So what are you doing? And here's some things you can do to improve all of that. So let's create a crisis and culture team that addresses both.
Do you find that in a lot of cases, people are not as proactive as that they need to be in crisis management? Here's what I mean. I often see, if you were to relate it to kind of PR, you see a company who has some major issue and they pull in a big PR team and they have, they get in front of the news and they wrote press releases and all these different things. Do you find that people are more put the fire out as opposed to prepare the ground so we don't have a fire? How do you get
reactionary all the time? And they're like, oh yeah, I don't need that.
Yes.
I don't need that. I was with a client in California in the hospitality space. And we were talking, and I said, you never know when something's going to happen. No, this will never happen. Well, let's role play some things that'll happen. No, we're just a small place. Nothing will happen. 2 months later, he called me. They had a wedding. 2 people left the wedding. They were drinking, possibly. We don't know. And they drove the car into a lake and drowned.
Oh, my gosh.
And on their property. So, okay, now everybody in the media is calling. Well, listen, he's like, what do we do now? I said, well, this is the advantage of having holding statements, making sure everybody on your staff knows that loose lips sink ships, speak with one voice so that everybody's in unison. Make sure there's a chain of command. Because as a reporters, your job is just to get a soundbite.
Yeah.
So you're going to call the company. They're going to forward you to the leader's voicemail. You'll never hear from him or her again. And then you're just going to look on social media to see who works at that company and see if you can get them to talk, or go to that company and sit in the parking lot and try to poach people as they're walking out to their cars. And you have to make sure that people are aware of what can happen. So that's the key. If you put out statements and you get in front of everything, you'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah. So what kind of organizations are you typically speaking to now? And does that shift? In other words, does it depend on the economy, what's going on in the world? There's certain companies, organizations, certain industries that are wanting, this kind of advice more than others, though I think everybody should, for exactly the reason you just said. Are there more particular industries that are more interested and more, on top of this than others?
Yeah, a great question. 2 in particular, the hospitality space and the nonprofit space. And the nonprofits have dealt with the embezzlement, have dealt with the bad press. And, for them, it's a lot of the storytelling as well. What are you selling? What's your differentiator? Because everybody's in need, but why you? And getting their message out. Not so much from a PR point of view, but you just can't put your name. You have to put underneath your name what you do, because the name might not be as recognizable as Coca-Cola or Pepsi.
Maybe.
And then on the hospitality side, it's, a lot of crisis management. That's where they need help because believe it or not, they run into issues with staff, with guests, with members at private clubs, with food issues, with issues that relate to pretty much everything you can think of or not even think of. Things get out of hand quickly. And we saw that a lot during the pandemic with people wearing masks. Well, I don't want to wear a mask. Why do I have to wear a mask? You don't wear a mask. And whether or not that policy was something that could be challenged. So I saw that a lot. But other companies as well, and, regular businesses, businesses that are medium-sized, as you will, law firms, potentially might need some help. Then there's the networking aspect where every business needs help with that, learning. And it's just, again, understanding that awkwardness of walking into a room with this purpose of I'm supposed to go out there and get as many cards as possible. No, that's not it. It's not, I got them all, I win. It's have some meaningful conversations and see if that person's a fit. And a lot of people don't understand that. So it's a fun space to be in as, because some people view, hey, we're still closed, we're on lockdown, I want to do everything this way. And then you have others that are like, yeah, I'm done with the pandemic.
Yep.
So come on in, train the team, let's go here and let's do this. So it all depends, where you are and where you're going.
It's interesting, Corey, that you mentioned networking because, and that might come from your reporting days and having to, get in front of, I don't know, but it's interesting to me. There are an awful lot of entrepreneurs, business people, salespeople, business owners that are out there networking in their community and they really don't understand how. And it's interesting that you brought that up because that's not something you were necessarily trained in, but, knowing you and knowing your involvement in our community, you absolutely understand that. So talk a little bit about, instead of somebody, because I find when people network, they'll meet somebody and if they sell themselves, which is like the number one worst thing to do. Let me tell you what I do, and obviously. But even if they learn that, they get past the networking 101, oftentimes they don't know what questions to ask either. Like, hi, what do you do? They don't. So what are some things, with your questioning ability and your strength in that, what are some things people could ask to really truly engage and not in a phony way, but in a real way and engage some conversation?
Well, before I answer that, for those of you who don't know, Greta is one of the best at teaching that. And I've sat in on some of your seminars and picked up some tips and tricks. But, for me, it's just natural because I have the gift for gab, but you'll go in and, the hard part is sometimes like penetrating that circle that people form. And it's almost like when you're single at a nightclub and you see that group of women out there and you're like, hey, let me dance over. But you just go on and I just talk about current events or what's happening, obviously staying away from politics, but hey, how are you? How's everybody doing? And hey, I'm great. Hey, so, what's your involvement in this group? Or what do you like about this organization? Oh, I like this, this, and this, because everybody's going to say, what's your name? What do you do? Or they look at the little name tag. And it's, then I'll ask the open-ended question. Say, so how long have you been in the group? I've been there for 5 years. What do you love most about it and why?
I like that.
Or, what do you, then they weave in inevitably what they do. And then when they tell you that, hey, what are some of the challenges you have? When I ask them conversationally, what are some of the challenges? I won't say it so reporterish, but, what are some of the challenges? What's the biggest pain in your butt at work each week? And they'll tell you. And then right away, I'm like, okay, is this a fit for me?
Yeah.
Because instead of throwing the laundry list at them, I'm just listening and gathering information. And then they give me a card. I take the card back, and on the back of the card, I'll put them in my phone, and then I'll put in the notes section everything I've learned about them, what, the wife's name, the kid's name, who's their favorite team, where they work, what's this, where they want to be, just touch points from the conversation. So that when I call back, I can say, hey, how are things? I know you have a birthday coming up or whatever it was. So it's just really keeping, really just being a fact finder.
Yeah. It is. But the way you've discussed it, though, is much more open-ended and much more instead of, hey, what's your name? What do you do? How long? And those questions are okay, but they're very, to be able to open that up. How long have you been there? What's your involvement in the organization? What do you find is the best thing about this organization? Or what do you, that kind of thing? I love that. That's a really, really good idea. And that's what I think people need. I think people know that they need to network. They don't really understand what that means and they don't know how. It's a very uncomfortable, I always describe it as, it's like the high school dance all over again. You're all excited to go. You go there and you go, oh God, I'm so uncomfortable. So you look for somebody that you look for your friends. You're in that group, which we all think, oh, that whole group of people, they're just a clique. Well, no, they're not. They just don't know where else to go. So I think that's really important to give people some ideas of what questions to ask and how to do that.
It's so true. One of the things, I'm in leadership Palm Beach, and one of the things that I've learned is, hey, when we get on the bus, sit next to somebody different every time.
Exactly.
Everybody has a story, and genuinely, I'm interested in people's stories. So when I go to the networking event, I'll say hello to of course, my friends and the people I know, but then I'll try to talk with somebody else that I don't know and say, hey, I see you're new, or welcome, or hey, it's really great to meet you. My name's Corey, tell me about you, or did you watch the game last night? If it's a Monday, yeah, I watched the Dolphin game and blah, 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 or I'm not a sports fan. Hey, that's great. What'd you do this weekend? Anything cool?
Right. I love it. And I think what's important too is the fact that you're, like you said, rather than sitting with the people that reaching out to other people. And it's funny, people go, well, I'm uncomfortable doing that. Well, let me tell you what, so are they. And they're desperate for somebody to come talk to them. That interaction is what all of us want. And I think you're right to talk to somebody who maybe is sitting by themselves or you haven't talked to before, you don't really know. I've never, in all the years I've done this, I've never heard anybody go, oh my God, I can't believe you're talking to me. I mean, people are always embracing it and open to it because, we're a people person. We like that and we like to engage with people. And if somebody's going to legitimately reach out to us, I've never seen anyone say no to that, but we're so uncomfortable with it, right?
It's uncomfortable. I mean, think about it. They don't teach us that in college. There's no class. You're supposed to come out, get a job, and then go find business. Well, how do you do that? Where is this business I'm supposed to find? And what am I supposed to do when I go to the networking event? So there's a lot of people that are uncomfortable, and particularly the younger people that I'll see. So, I try to make them comfortable. Hey, what do who would be a match for you is this person. Let me take you over there.
Love that.
So it's just, it's giving back. And for me, it's just natural curiosities. I was talking with somebody about workforce housing about 6 months ago at an event and having a genuine discussion. And then they saw them again at another event about their organization and what they're doing. And they just reached out and said, you know what? We don't know our story. And I was just thinking of you because you were so curious about what I do. And you phrased it back to me so beautifully that I thought, wow, my team can benefit. So it's just little things like that.
So if you were to kind of wrap that up, give some takeaways to people that are listening today, which are mostly entrepreneurs, individual business people. We have some CEOs and people running businesses. What should they do? What is their message? How do they get that out? I mean, I know that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of what you do, but a couple of takeaways that people can go, oh, okay, that would make a difference in my business. What are some of those things?
Look at your differentiator. If you're an air conditioning company, if you're a real estate agent, what is your why? What makes you different? You can't just put, hey, I'm a real estate agent or I'm an estate planning lawyer. You're an estate planning lawyer. Listen, I help protect your family's legacy.
Yeah.
I'll make sure your money goes where it's supposed to after you're gone. Look at your story. What makes you unique? Share that story. Get everybody speaking with one voice, the same message. Make sure if you're a larger company that you've got a plan in place for crisis. Make sure there's a chain of command. Make sure that everybody knows who's supposed to do what. And then lastly, once you find your story and you've got this plan in place, share it. Continually share it. Tell everyone about it. And listen, I'm just honored to be here. I'm sure I could learn a great deal from all your other guests that are on. And, as entrepreneurs, it's just wake up every day, hustle, perseverance, perseverance, perseverance.
It is. Be interested in other people and hustle and get up and out every day and do something. I agree with you. I agree. Thank you, Corey. It's always such a pleasure talking to you. You're such a positive person. You always bring such great ideas. I'm so happy to have you, and everybody's going to get so much from this. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Greta. You've really been a tremendous influence to me, and I've learned so much, and I'm just so glad and thrilled that you're doing this, getting people's stories out, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Wouldn't think about doing it without you. Thank you so much. Hang in there a minute with me. Bye-bye.